What is this video? How Indian society holds India back. Is India too diverse? The Emissary. What could that even mean? Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be watching The Emissary, how Indian society holds India back. It intrigued me on my recommended page here on my home tab. So I figured, hey, why not? Let's see what they have to say. Hindi subtitles are available. How does India's strong societal identity hinder its progress? Is India too diverse? What role do political parties play in this resistance to change? How crucial are urbanization and industrialization for overcoming these obstacles? In this episode, we dive deep into the inertia of India's societal and political landscape, examining the complexities and necessary reforms for growth, whatever that means. Interesting. Very, very interesting. India's obesity of diversity? What is this chapter? Obesity of diversity. Okay. All right. Interesting. Link to this video will be in the description down below. So if you want to check it out, it will be down there for you. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give this a watch.
So you click this video, I'm talking in an American accent, so you know it's time I start to condescendingly lecture you on how India is too bigoted, it's too superstitious, it's not feminist enough, it's not gay enough, or some other pet issue that you'll usually see in tikka masala journalism. But I'm not here to tell you
the horny sophistication of Chola ki Pechi? Pichi Pechi? What?
that. I'm here to go deeper, but not like Alex Jones, you know, telling
Alex Jones is pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. Alex Jones, he says some really wild and crazy stuff, but he's pretty funny.
you reptilians are controlling your Maggie supply, making your kids eat bugs and stuff. Not that deep. And for those of you who say I shouldn't comment on India because I wasn't born in India, well, I have one message for you.
I'm Sidhu.
Sidhu, where are you from, Sidhu?
I'm Indian.
Are you like an half caste?
I'm full Indian.
How come you don't look Indian?
My mother's mother and my mother's father, they wear Indian clothes.
How exactly are you Indian?
India.
By how?
Because I costume myself like an Indian.
So you are Indian by costume?
I'm Indian. Like I watch their film.
What is this?
I sing their song. I dance their dance, and I'm smelling like garlic.
Oh my god. I dance their dance and I smell like garlic. What the hell?
I sing their song. I dance their dance, and I'm smelling like garlic.
Oh my god. What is this? What is this?
You are Indian.
All around India.
Anyways, I don't want to start off with the culture stuff. In true Gujarati fashion, let's talk about the money. India
Okay.
has made massive
Money
strides
time.
economically since 1991, when PV Narasimha Rao enacted massive liberalization reforms. And especially in the past 10 years, when India went from a fragile 5 economy to the world's top emerging market for investment and fastest growing major economy. It's a pretty rosy picture, right? Well, you just spilled
it's pretty
Ruafza
nice.
all over that picture because that didn't translate into a strong election win for Mr. Narendra Modi. Well,
I mean, but he still won though. India's insight into India's Lok Sabha elections. Share seats by alliance. Okay.
while India as a whole is developing, a lot of the rural and poorer parts of India aren't doing so hot. Almost all economic experts say that India must do reforms that open up India's economy for more private investment, more business-friendly labor and land laws, and large reforms to India's agricultural sector. But what's so urgent about these reforms right now? Am I just butthurt about Indian election results? Well, yeah, I'm pretty butthurt, I'm not gonna lie.
Who is this guy? Who is this guy? I want to learn a little bit more about this guy. Exploring India, its politics, culture, history, economics, and diaspora. He's got a website. He's got a Twitter. Check out his Twitter. Who is the emissary? He's followed by India and Pixels, and Modi. Modi follows him as well. Narendra Modi follows the emissary. Wow. I mean, that's pretty big, right? That's pretty huge. He's only following 2,000 people, 2,600 people. That's pretty massive. Huh. Okay. Cuz isn't Modi like the most followed account on X? Who is this guy? Here's his website, About Us. Indeed, India encapsulates so much of the story of humanity as its ancient epic, the Mahabharata, emphatically declares about itself. The emissary has started with the purpose of exploring and understanding India as well as its diaspora through analysis, aesthetics, and spirit of adventure, spanning politics, history, economics, and beyond. But who is? I want to know who is the man behind it. Who is this man? Well, the video I'm watching right now is his second most popular video. His most popular is India's skin tone obsession. All right, let's just get back to the video then. Yeah, we'll just get back to the video and keep on keeping on.
Able to introduce for the first time.
This meme is great. This lady screaming. It's so good. It's so funny.
Anywhere the 40.
But good things can come out of that hurt sometimes. Reflection, introspection, excess fiber, you get my drift. But for me, it's two main things. Firstly, India can't just chum along. Its demographic dividend will soon become a deterioration.
Why is that? India's demographic dividend, of which 68% working age population is those aged 15 to 64. Okay. He'll explain it.
One wing is a terror state of Pakistan.
What?
For me, it's two main things. Firstly, India can't just chum along. Its demographic dividend will soon become a deterioration. At one wing is a terror state of Pakistan, whose sole reason for semblance and unity is to screw over India. On the other wing is the wildly successful country of the People's Republic of China, which has a penchant for perpetually surprising India's armed forces, who seem to be a bit more interested in pensions rather than performance. The Red Dragon continues to fly around the Indian elephant, precisely because it bit the silver bullet of economic reform and embraced iron law and order. Chinese metal will easily pierce Indian bravado and pride disguised as metal. These foreign threats and fumbling a demographic gift into a grouse can completely derail the India story. Secondly, India's opposition is just not normal. The worst commentators on India usually do this both sides type of thing that, hey, no matter who's in charge, India's gonna do really good, don't worry, everything is just gonna go up and to the right. But that's just not how economies and countries work, guys. Politics has consequences.
He is right about that. He is right. Politics do have consequences. And if you are sacked with a leader that doesn't have the country's best interest in mind and who fills his cabinet of people with not so great people, you will eventually end up in a downward trend, a downward trajectory. And, I will admit, not to take away from this for a moment and apply it to like the US, Biden, he was not the best president ever. Not very good. His cabinet was not very good. So, and the US is in massive inflation, and it was on a downward trend. So we'll see how things change in the future. But yeah, like I said, he is right on that front. If you get the wrong leader, you get the wrong, group of people in power, it will unfortunately go downward.
Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, and many other nations had this type of
True.
bright prospect to them. But due to economic policy choices and bad politicians, their shiny line chart that kept going up and to the right suddenly shifted south and really hasn't recovered since. In
very
2024,
true.
the Congress Party and its allies proposed the exact opposite type of manifesto one would need for economic development. It was mainly focused on caste and redistribution. Add
Yeah,
to the
this is
fact that
never
the
good.
Congress Party frequently begs for international interference. I don't think that's really what a developing economy really needs. Nor a
Right.
country
Hold on. Let's go back and read this. I'm agreeing with this guy so far. If Indian democracy collapses, Raul remarks draws fire. BJP says he's seeking intervention of Europe and U.S. In the grip of Maoist thought process through his minions, earlier Raul said the UPA government dropped the ball during India's urban transformation.
nor a country that's been the victim of colonialism for hundreds of years. India's opposition has morphed into an existential threat to India itself. Only economic growth can help India escape from the economic desperation encouraged by the Congress Party. Now, some people might say, hey, can't freebies and welfare solve all of India's
No.
economic woes? There
No
are plenty
way.
of videos of people availing freebie
It's
benefits.
good. I mean, there's a difference between providing for your citizens and giving your citizens too much, right? There's a fine line, because you do want a society, you do want a government that takes care of its citizens, that makes sure that all their needs are provided for, that they have access to what they need to develop, to prosper, to grow. But if you're just giving them everything, that doesn't incentivize them to grow.
And their lives hugely improving because of it. I'm not trying to deny the impact of that. But freebies and welfare, well, they're basically temporary band-aids, or
Right.
crutches. They don't replace actual economic structural change. The economy needs stronger muscles. It needs to be able to move better. It's similar to a human body in that way. You can't just have
Exactly.
these temporary medicines. You need the body to grow and evolve into something anew. India has to enact reforms to get away from the current feudal agrarian structure focused on agriculture and instead go into manufacturing. Like all other developed economies in the world, India needs to get people off farms and into factories. On top of that, freebies aren't really free. The buck eventually comes knocking at the door, as we've seen in
Karnataka government may monetize land to raise resources to support expenditures resulting from guarantees. Idle or vacant land of the Bangalore Development Authority are also being considered for monetization. And yeah, and he is right. You know, when you're supplementing people with freebies, I mean, that money does come from somewhere, and typically it's from the other people that aren't getting the freebies. So then that just creates an even further divide between the people that are on these freebies, on this welfare, and it leaves, the people paying taxes, they're kind of sour about it. They get disgruntled at them.
various states that have enacted massive freebies in the past couple of years. So why doesn't India just enact these reforms? It's simple enough, right? Propose it, pass it through the parliament, and then boom, boom, bang, bang, it's done. Well, obviously
God.
that's not how it goes. And the unfortunate answer to this question of why India doesn't reform is, well, Indians. All right, you could get the hate comments out.
Okay.
Of the way, I know what you're thinking. I don't blame you.
Why-
How it goes.
why do
And the
you-
unfortunate answer to this question of why India doesn't reform is, well, Indians. All right, you could get the hate comments out of the way.
Okay.
I know
All right.
what you're thinking. I don't blame you. Comment as much as you want, but stay with me a little. It's not what you think. Significant economic reform only arrived in India at the gunpoint of the IMF in 1991.
Wow.
With the foolish bravery of Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the early 2000s, and today with Narendra Modi, who narrowly won a third mandate despite a second term of economic liberalization.
iPhone production in India hits 14 billion. Apple's make in India plan a huge success. Apple's significant surge in iPhone production in India reaches a remarkable 14 billion. And you know what the unfortunate thing about this is? Apple's actually come out and said that they're going to be investing like or like God, how much was it? Like $500 billion, $500 billion, in their production in the U.S. So they're even stepping away from this. Here, let me look that up. Okay, so they're building their AI infrastructure here in the U.S. Apple pledges a 500 billion in U.S. spending. It could boost the iPhone maker to build AI servers in Houston and spend 500 billion in the U.S. I hate websites that make me have to sign in. Don't make me sign in. I just want to read your article. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Anyways, Apple said Monday would spend 500 billion in the U.S. investments in the next 4 years. That will include a giant factory in Texas for artificial intelligence services and add about 20,000 research development jobs across the country in that time. The 500 billion in expected spending includes everything from purchases from U.S. suppliers to U.S. filming of television shows or movies, Apple TV Plus service. The company declined to say how much of the figure was already planning to spend in the U.S. supply base, which includes firms such as Corning, blah blah blah, that makes glass for iPhones in Kentucky. So yeah, they're just moving more of their production here in the U.S. All right, let's continue the video.
Privatization, fiscal discipline, and even backing down on two reforms in labor and agriculture. Only by his sheer personality, as well as a lot of welfare done prior, did Modi eke through a victory. Electoral backlash has whipped all three reformist prime ministers in the face. Two of them were kicked out of parliament. One came with a very reduced majority. Reforms are tough in democratic states in general, or even states in general, but Indian society means executing reforms is basically playing on hard mode. You're probably going to lose an election, honestly. Just why is this though? A lot of other countries have also done economic reforms. What's so tough about it? Well, you have to remember this. Most of developed countries did economic reforms prior to the age of the internet. If not, when the internet wasn't as crazy as it is today due to social media.
I never thought about this. Yeah. India is growing in the social media age, so things are looked at differently.
Along with that, many of these countries, whether democracies or not, did very undemocratic things to push through the reforms, much of which includes violence and state coercion towards its citizens. This is stuff that you really can't get away with these days, especially in democracies where there is a huge chance of electoral backlash. But India is still one level up from this. It's not just democracy and the internet that are a problem here. I mean, we're kind of going on legendary or God of War mode at this point. The biggest reasons for Indian difficulty in reform is because the Indian society is exceptionally strong versus its states, as well as India being extremely diverse. Yatha Raja Tatha Praja. As is the king, so are his subjects. This is a famous Sanskrit proverb on governance, but democracy flips this monarchic phrase on its head. Yatha Praja Tatha Raja. As are the subjects, so is the king. American political scientist Myron Weiner has described India as a strong society, weak state country. The politicians are at the will of society, a wily hydra-like beast, unable to be broken or tamed. Sometimes its heads snap at each other in a cannibalistic frenzy that can only be curtailed by the snapping of the state's whip. India is not for beginners, especially when it comes to politics. If India's society was homogenous in, say, a Han manner, we would naturally see a strong state. That isn't to say India should be homogenous like the Han, though. I think there's a lot of benefits of Indian diversity, but we also have to face some of the negatives.
I think the diversity is what gives India its strength too, as well. Though I mean, he's going to list off some negatives, but I really do think that India is unique in having such a diverse culture and society, and that's what does allow it to be more prosperous.
India's demographic diversity eclipses even its geographic diversity. We have a raucous, constantly squibbling society that translates into a patronage-based decentralized state. Each group has its own lord and connection to the central apparatus. This is very different than a lot of other democracies and even parliamentary systems. This amount of diversity combined with democracy, well, it starts to create some rough edges between groups. Integral to understanding this decentralized polity and rambunctious society is something I like to call my community Izzat. I was inspired by my early days as a Redditor to come up with this phrase.
Not a Redditor, dude. Oh, not a Redditor. Come on. Oh, Reddit is so bad.
Here's a quick picture of me back then.
It's not him. Clearly, it's not him, but it's funny still.
Perhaps in more serious terms, we should
Is
call
it him?
back then.
No, I don't think this is him. He's just making a joke.
Perhaps in more serious terms, we should call it Izzatism. Izzat is an Urdu word for honor or pride, and most other Indian languages also have a similar type of word. Izzatism is the phenomenon by which Indian reform and governance are thwarted by violent or electoral threats from communities that feel that their Izzat or pride is being threatened by said reform or even governance.
I can see this. I will admit that I have seen glimpses of this since I've started learning about India over the past year.
Names are frequently covered for economic dominance or extraction, as well as societal oppression of other groups. Nonetheless, the idea of Izzat can turbocharge a group and intensify violent mobilization in a way not seen in other societies. This type of resistance to reform is exceptional. When interfacing with the state, Izzat is placed at the forefront. Policies, reforms, and even patronage of other groups, it must pass through the sieve of Izzat, or else a community will enact its wrath on the state, whether with the bullet or with the ballot. All normal government functions and development must first do a battle with community pride, with Izzat. Lal Bahadur Shastri coined the phrase Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. But nowadays, this phrase is kind of atrophied. It's decayed. As we see sectors like agriculture and defense, or the armed forces, be very, very resistant to reform. And a lot of this resistance, well, the rhetoric around it is usually about Izzat. This has led to India's agricultural sector being a total mess and farm reforms being repealed. Many other smaller countries are much more efficient with their agricultural production than India. India has the potential to become an agricultural powerhouse in the world, but its resistance to these reforms have simply left it behind. When it comes to the army, it's becoming a bit more popular narrative that even the central government doesn't really trust its performance, especially considering some of its lackluster innings in the past few years.
Is that true? Is that really true?
Okay, so Indian people are really proud of their identities. Is that really the end of the world? I mean, so
No.
what? That's like the beauty of India, isn't it? So many different castes and ethnicities and religions and peoples all coming together to be India. The idea of India. It's amazing, isn't it? Well, that's a good story, and it's honestly a pretty true story, but there's a dark side to this. What if there was a thing as too much diversity, where a place has so much diversity and difference that it starts lacking coherence, where common goals become very difficult, where zero-sum thinking beats moving forward together, where jealousy beats out advancement. I call this idea India's obesity of diversity. But when you combine India's hyper-diversity with a scarcity of resources plus democracy, that's a potent recipe for a lot of inter-Indian conflict and suspicion and strife between groups. So when the time for reform comes, many groups will feel like their identity is being attacked, or
This
their
is
market
true.
is being attacked.
This
and
is
they get
true.
jealous
I even me as an outsider, I have seen aspects of this online.
of other groups, or they feel that they're being treated unfairly. And at the end of the day, economic reforms, they do break up current monopolies or oligopolies in markets. So I get the proposition of it being a threat to someone's economic livelihood. But India needs reform. India needs to move forward. It can't be simply stuck in this stasis of society. You see this happening on a mass scale currently with the idea of Jatitva and redistribution. When it comes to Jatitva, the INC as well as other opposition parties encourage a caste first type of mindset. They encourage the view of economic progress and development as solely an upper caste benefit and endeavor. That's why they propose things like massive redistribution and caste censuses and proportional power and profits in any sector you can imagine. They
I'm not a
encourage
fan of the caste
caste-mongers.
systems. I'm really not a fan of the caste systems, and any other such programs or incentives like the caste systems. I know here in the U.S. there's this whole thing about like the DEI initiatives, in the ESG, the DEI, stuff like that, and those are, you know, like when Trump came in, that's one of the main things he targeted and tackled. And since he came into power, you know, all these different major companies in the U.S. have abandoned their DEI systems. They've abandoned their hiring initiatives and their job positions specifically for DEI. And is being gutted from the government as well. I don't know. I'm personally not a fan of them. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, on with the video.
And parochialists in every single caste to create a suspicion between all castes. With this happening, that means the BJP can't really win because their USP is uniting as many Hindu castes as possible. Now each caste is mired in chauvinism or fear, uncertainty, doubt, or the cardinal emotion of envy, and the BJP's coalition breaks down while the INC comes to power. Now everyone loves Indian diversity. Abroad it wins platitudes of unity and diversity, tolerance, secularism, pluralism, and various other feel-good words that paper over the grotesque condition of much of the country, easily revealable with a casual stroll in an average alley, or nowadays a white supremacist timeline on Twitter. Within India, there's definitely a valid view that India's diversity contributes to India's uniqueness.
Twitter
and
is full of white
preservation
supremacists.
Traditions. But today, these traditions are eroding away like ancient ruins.
Twitter's not just full of white supremacists. Twitter's full of every supremacist. Any race you can be a supremacist of any race. And Twitter is just, it feels like it is a open market for these guys. It's unfortunate.
Preservation of traditions. But today these traditions are eroding away like ancient ruins, once painted streaks of red and gold, but now devoid of sanctity and worship. The crucibles of India's traditions, jati or caste, are now essentially ethnic identities divorced from religious rites. Jati is frequently paired with varna, but now we see a third partner, category. General category, other backwards class, scheduled tribe, scheduled caste are much more salient than Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and Dalit. Bureaucratization and racialization of caste have created a vicious seesaw competition between groups.
Yeah, the racialization is I don't know, man. I prefer. I would hope. What I want is I want society to be colorless, like colorblind. You don't care about what color, race, ethnicity anyone is, and merit based. You don't get a step ahead just because you're gay or you're a certain ethnicity, right? Everyone should. We're all humans, man. And I say this all the time. You can go back and look at any of my videos. I say this literally all the time. We're all humans. We all need to come together. We need to put aside our differences. And we just need to focus on conquering the galaxy. That's what needs to happen. We need to spread humanity off Earth onto other planets. That's what needs to happen.
The Varna category is a real triple lens to understand caste.
The Jati Varna
category is a real triple lens to understand caste, as well as India's diversity. Each Indian group peers at each other with beady little eyes, uncaring of any advancement, save that which is one tier, one step, 1 inch of the other India. There is no there, there's only here. Going beyond is an imagination. Falling behind is a reality. The Indian will never move forward as long as he is looking over his shoulder. I know I'm being kind of super negative.
It's like the
here,
crab bucket.
In a way, probably a bit unfair, but I think we need to start looking a bit harsher at the idea of Indian diversity. While India is centralizing physically through infrastructure, mentally with technology, economically with reforms, and even culturally with Hindutva or nationalism, it still has strong forces pulling it apart on identity lines. Part of this is mostly harmless. I mean, there are real reasons for Indians to be attached to their identity. Whether it's traditions, cultures, social circles, economic relationships, there are plenty of real reasons to be proud and attached to one's identity. I don't think that's a problem. But for many of the people who try to pull apart from this Indian identity, I'm talking about the leaders of this type of movement of separation. A lot of it is rooted in the stigma and shame of the Indian identity itself. Globally, India is still regarded as a poor and backward society. For this reason, some of these parochialists try to run away from the idea of India. They'll attach themselves to X identity over the Indian identity. Liberal elites differentiate themselves via class by taking on the mores and cultures and tastes of the global elite or global liberalism, whatever's popular in Manhattan or London or South Mumbai. Caste parochialists always laud their legendary and amazing history and caste exploits, but blame the present condition or deterioration of their caste on this caste or that caste, or whoever they could point their finger at first. Regionalists believe there's something different from Indians.
Literal English meaning of names of Indian states. The land of three shivlings? Land of southern people, the Tamar country, land of the black soil, land of coconuts, land of cows, great nation, land of Gujars, land of kings, land of the 36 forts, land of the forest. The uneven land.
No matter their skin color or smell or how many times they get called some Indian slur. They try to make outsiders think that there's some special type of Indian or not Indian or something really cringe and weird. I mean, come on, Mike and Stacy just think you're Indian, dude. Like, that's the end of that. Religious hardliners try to explain away their Indian identity in pretty comical ways and usually attack Indians in a way that would make Uncle Tom blush. Apostasy from the Indian identity is upward social mobility for these folks, or at least they think it is. Of course, one step outside the subcontinent and they'll realize that all they are and ever will be is an Indian. Why is there no consequence?
Yeah, I mean, most people outside of the US are going to look at pretty much anyone from India and just say, "Hey, you're Indian." They're not going to say, you're Punjabi, you're Tamil. They're not going to know to break it down between, like a Jain or Buddhist or Hindu or anything like that. It's just not known.
For this apostasy or treason of the Indian identity? Well, why would there be? So separate is Indian society that many people would say, is it even a society itself? How can there be a betrayal of the Indian identity when there's barely a consciousness of kind between Indians? While some point to India's storied tradition of debate and pluralism, those are very true, the scathing and slavish demeanor of a lot of these parochialists, these apostates, these betrayers? Well, it naturally evokes a sense of disgust from a cosmopolitan or nationalistic or well-adjusted Indian. The behavior is plainly unnatural. So how do we solve this? Well, luckily it's already underway. First, we need to look at the idea of rural and urban India. Check out this chart to see the difference in voting patterns for India's BJP. They obviously do a lot better when it comes to urban India versus rural India. Why do I bring up the BJP? Well, the BJP, as well as a few other parties, are probably the only ones interested in actual development and reform. As I mentioned prior, the INC and the India Opposition Alliance, they just don't seem to care about this.
Government is diverting funds meant for projects and placing them in cold storage. What? Why?
Not just that, but they also benefit from India's rural character and rural votes. You might assume that India's rural areas are more conservative, they're a lot more right-wing, and they're a lot more religious. But as I said before, India is not for beginners, especially its politics. You have to throw those notions out the door.
Yeah, that's how it is here in the U.S. Typically, the more rural you are, the more conservative and religious you are.
Caste and freebies can override all of that. Not just that, but you also have to examine the phenomenon of urbanization and what it does to Indians as well as its history within India. Between 1000 BC and 400 BC, India massively urbanized. New ideas about the individual and Indian were being birthed as aristocrats debated in the courts of kings, with some shedding their clothes, shaving their colored beards, and shelving their golden finery to be clad in fiery robes. India's cities birthed new conceptions of self, science, philosophy, and even dharma. From the heartbeat of these new metropolises came a new Indian culture. History is rhyming as a nascent urbanization is emerging now. A huge migration, mixing, and centralization is occurring across India. Identities,
Wow. So this is projected by 2031, huh? So you're the only non-urbanized zone projected by 2021, or the less urbanized zone, like Bihar, Sikkim, okay. And then some of these, what's the major city here in Mizoram? I'm trying to think. I can't quite remember it.
identities and sub-identities, they're all facing a tsunami of change. How they evolve is anyone's guess, but India's destiny is to orient itself towards its cities. A looming delimitation of India's parliamentary seats means that urban areas will receive more seats versus rural areas than prior. The balance between urban and rural India is shifting in urban India's favor. But how exactly can urbanization save India from its obesity of diversity? Urbanization is important because as Indians urbanize, their parochial or local identities give way to more cosmopolitan identities. This is not to say that caste or ethnic or any other identities should be annihilated or destroyed, nor does it mean that Indian cities will totally wipe these types of identity consciousness. But their salience and importance, they will diminish. Voting patterns in urban areas usually point to less sticky caste voting, or at least being more friendly towards economic development. As always, there are exceptions to this, but I'm telling you,
It's crazy. It's crazy because here in the U.S., typically the larger cities you see are voting more left-leaning, more DEI based, more, I mean, I guess you could say almost caste based, but we don't have, the US is not a caste based society, but like it's like the opposite of what's going on here apparently.
you the general trend. It seems to be pointing in that direction fairly clearly. Young urban India, as well as those flocking towards it, they have a different mentality. There is a brimming sense of optimism and passion and ambition for India's next generation of change makers. One really important thing to understand is young Indians are connected to the internet from a young age in ways that prior generations have never been. This means they see a lot of the success of Indians abroad, but more importantly, they see the success of the world. They realize a lot of the dysfunction of India currently, it doesn't need to be that way. There's an element in their minds of thinking, why can't we be successful? Why can't we get rid of pollution? Why can't we get rid of poverty? Why can't we have livable cities? Why can't we have breathable air? Why do we have to have all this social dysfunction? All the terrible parts about India, well, some of it will stay, but some of it will go through the process of alchemy. Those Indians who want to be the change they see in the world, as Gandhiji said previously, well, they are going to be the biggest change makers in India. And as India has a fairly favorable macro situation, an upswinging economy, those Indians who go for the throat of success, they're going to be successful. They understand India's flaws, but more importantly, they understand India's potential. Joining urbanization and perhaps a savior of India's rural areas will be industrialization. Currently, around 45% of India's workforce is engaged in agriculture. An estimated 20 to 25% is engaged in manufacturing.
45% of India's workforce is agricultural based? That's wild.
The transition away from farming is directly correlated with going into manufacturing. This means as India urbanizes, as it industrializes, the scope for a lot of the bad policies of India's opposition, policies that have held back India for nearly 60, 70 plus years, well, they start to lose purchase. As India urbanizes and industrializes, the bad habits of the opposition will be punished, and their strength will diminish. This is why reform is very important. This is why Indian society needs to be overcome in a way. India has to move forward, and the only way to do that is urbanization and industrialization. Industrialization will be an incantation of steel. Only through the sorcery of the city can India move past the witchcraft of ruralism. The ethic of agriculture must be sacrificed at the altar of industry. The cult of the village must be supplanted by the creed of the polis. The metronomic mantra of manufacturing, a systematic chanting of silicone and steel, will finally deliver India to its destiny, far beyond both optimists and pessimists. Thanks again everyone for listening, especially through a more, ranty episode. But while I have some worries about India, I'm still very positive, and obviously I'm still rooting for it. I think the government will adjust, but more importantly, like I said, there is a golden generation emerging in India of young Indians. These are the people to watch out for. Anyways, this is Akshay from the Emissary. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Akshay from the Emissary. Huh. I mean, I can definitely see where he's coming from on a lot of his aspects here. I definitely see and understand what he's trying to say. Basically, freebies, casteism, and reliance on I mean, the reliance on diversity is holding India back. I'm really curious to see what some of the comments have to say. Very curious about this. Someone asked me how diverse is India. I simply said 10 kilometers radius from my location, you'll find 10 different language, 10 different looking people, 10 different traditions and cultures, 10 different food habits. Obviously, I'm a foreigner, right? Like you shouldn't listen to what I have to say on India. You should, listen to Indians. You should, listen to your government, to your people. Like anything I have to say, it shouldn't really be taken into account, right? I'm just trying to understand from as many perspectives as I can. Um, Interesting, very interesting. I so I knew ahead of time before this video that like the rural and urban situation is vastly different, and I knew that a lot of rural people got a lot of freebies, and the unfortunate thing about Indian politics is about giving freebies. I've seen a lot of these like political posters, political ads that just go on and list freebie after freebie after freebie after freebie, and then they just have like a freebie competition, right, between each other. It's like, oh, we'll give women however much money a month. Oh, do that. Well, we'll do double that. And so it's like it's constantly just listing and competing against freebies, and I do think that is the wrong path, personally. Interesting. All right. Well, I'm gonna read the comments. The link to the video will be in the description down below, so please go and check it out. Okay, well, Christians and Muslim societies can advance rapidly because it's easy for them to organize an entire population under the Pope, Caliph, or Imam, I don't know what that is, and have a consistent consensus over what they want to do, but the same can't happen in Hinduism because Hinduism is not a single organized religion is with a strict code of law. It's a set of many religions beliefs coexisting. One community will say it's bad, do an animal sacrifice, another won't see any issue. The only factor binding them is that they all come from the same Vedic roots and under dharmic fold under which they organize when needed. We've been taught too much unity in diversity instead of unity and diversity. It's a false notion that we're united because we are diverse. We are united because we have diversity. Rather, it should be we are united despite our diversity. That's a good way to say it. Let's look at it that way. We're diverse because we're free. We're free because we're united as one to protect each other's freedom. To summarize, we should be united no matter what the diversity is, just a happy byproduct which can happily enjoy and cherish only if we're united, period. Corruption is the biggest problem. Everyone likes to talk about it, but no one does anything. We are diverse, not divided. All Indians are my brothers and sisters are not just words for me, they are my true feelings. I don't agree with privatization being the solution. The world is already becoming more oligarchy based, including India, and that's the big problem. Everything this young man said is applicable to West Africa, particularly Nigeria, Ghana, and Liberia. India is not a single country, it's a continent pretending to be a country. Varsha literally means the continent of Bharata. India always had hundreds of countries within itself. Jai Bharat. Finally, someone said it. Too much diversity and happy politics to celebrate. It would ultimately hamper any major reforms. Not only is a strong society too diverse, but at a mean level, the quality of human capital is very low. This means that being democracy, freedom hasn't led to any enough of us leveraging it for entrepreneurship and innovation, but hold the state hostage, demand freebies and appeasements. The video explains the Indian political dilemma better than some Indian political scientists' great work. As an Indian, this dude is Indian by heart, and that is what the meaning of being in. That's what being India means. Even when he said he smelt like garlic, like I don't know. I personally would say that's an insult. It's funny he said it, right? Because it was just so out of left field and random, but it's still kind of an insult. India is the most diverse country in the world. Every region, state, city has its own culture. That why we say unity and diversity. All that. Wow. Constructive criticism, how rare, almost extinct, appreciated brother. Too much diversity is like the clash of cultures we who don't like each other. Finally, someone understands how sinister Indian opposition actually is. They want to bring India back in time. India people are holding India back. A tourist looking out from his window in a moving bus, seeing the dusty shanty town passing by and giving his opinion. Is that what he's saying? He's calling this person a tourist looking out from his window in a moving bus, seeing the dusty shanty town passing by and giving his opinion. Interesting. Like, I don't know what this guy's background is. He like he said before, he has an American accent. So, um, I just don't know. I just don't know his background. You know, so I can't say. The dude's more educated on Indian problems than 90% of the public, politicians, lawmakers combined. The video gives so much insight into significant problems that look small. As a travel vlogger who frequently travels abroad, I had a lot of similar thoughts on my country, like weakness of its diversity, selfish opposition, but I am amazed to see your understanding of India. Brilliant video. Thanks for making this. A video like this that should be compulsory viewing for every Indian has less than 100,000 views and less than mediocre videos ranking in millions. Such a shame. Yeah. How many views does it have now? 93,000. Wow. Interesting. All right, we're gonna read some of the newer comments, see what they say. Do you know the entire Indian subcontinent, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, has 565 different countries before independence? We are divided, yes, divided by language, caste, lastly religion. Then comes the sexes. Even now, there is a raging debate over taxes from one state given to another for development, population uncontrolled in certain states, and instead of trying to curb the population, they are going to increase the number of seats for those states, the Bihar, and penalize the state that had succeeded. There's also debate over Hindi imposition, despite parents actually preferring English medium schools for their state language schools. Let me not touch caste issue. It's a bomb. Already enough is said about religion here. Multiculturalism, both language and religions don't work. Indian subcontinent is a prime example. Common citizen in India just wants to be left alone, wants to reduce tax, just be at peace, but no. It's also the biggest strength, as no area is self-sufficient enough. Great intro. Just a question, why force Hindu nationalism on very diverse populations instead of Indian nationalism? Half the problems will go away if Indian politicians stop creating a religious divide among its population, where the ruling party openly claims that they just need 80% Hindu votes united so they could win elections, while the other 20% go fuck themselves, whether it be Muslims, Sikhs, or Christians. Instead of solving the religious divide, they are just fueling the fire. Why would Sikhs just submit to this bullshit so they can polarize communities? Do you really call this a democracy where only Hindu vote matters? Look, Sikhs ain't Muslims that can't Sikhs ain't Muslims that can just suppressed with hooligan of BJP climb. I don't know what that is. Every day to show how proud Hindu they are. This needs to stop. P.S. I will get hate for this for calling out hooligans, but it's literally everyday news now. And about the I don't know anything about hooligans. About the economic reforms, say no to the forced reforms where they don't even talk about it in the parliament properly. Don't even talk to or discuss with farmers that are in question. No shit, dude. You can't arm twist people in democracy if you can. There's no democracy. Huh. Okay. Fuck with this tradition. India is an anomaly. I'm proud Indian, but yes, there's something as too diverse. I hope BJP remains for at least 2 to 3 more terms. The fuck did you just say cities will lead to less caste-based voting when I can't even get a flat rented out to me because I'm not from Brahmin? That He's the guy who lived here like a year and then went, let me tell these plebs what about being an Indian is, and BJP's post-development when they legit legalize political corruption. No matter what the ruling party says or does, the westernization of India's civilization is inevitable. The westernization of India. Well, is it westernization or is industrialization just westernization? Because the West is more industrial, and it started its industrial revolution sooner. Thus, is the West just industrialization? I don't know. All right. I've never seen more biased video than this. This dude's straight up sponsored by BJP. If you don't see a problem in India, you guys are part of the problem. There's no Indian identity, so there's no point in being loyal to am identity that does not exist. There's no apostasy. I've never heard of this word involved here. The writer thinks he can herd Sundar, Pichar, Sanak, etc., and random Indians in the same group. You can't because they aren't the same. I don't agree with privatization being the solution. The world already is becoming more. I already read that, actually. Okay. I'm now confused that whether am I Hindi or Marathi or Telugu or Kannada. I don't recommend taking a shot every time he says economic. Oh my God, I was of the opinion that no non-Indian, especially at YouTuber, could ever in 1,000 years understand the intricacies and complexities of Indian society and its politics. You totally shattered my preconception in a surprisingly pleasant way. Who even are you, man? How you know India better than many Indians? I am flabbergasted. I'm subscribing right away. Sorry for asking who you are even before doing a little bit of research, but I guess I was too excited to react. Saw the first video on your channel and got to know your name, some info about your background. Keep up the good work, brother. I came here to get offended, but going back a little more, learned about my own country. came to get offended. Oh man. Diversity have never worked in entire civilization of humankind. Damn, bro, you're more well versed on Indian society than most Indian political pundits. Sorry, but agriculture is important in a populated country. It is important. It is incredibly important. How are you going to feed the people otherwise, right? But with advancements in technology, you'll need less people to be agricultural focused. That's the whole idea. You become industrialized, you become urbanized, you create new ways to do the agriculture, thus you need less farmers. What about Northeast India? We don't exist. Oh no, you guys exist. Assam's great. I love Assam. All right. Okay. I think I understand. I think I understand. Interesting video. Interesting video. Very interesting video. Dude, but he smells like garlic. Come on. He must be Indian. That line, it was so random. It flabbergasted me, man. Absolutely flabbergasted me. All right. You know what? That's going to be it for today. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments about what you think. I'm going to go ahead and go now. Take care. Goodbye.